Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Well, got a lot to cover today. We have disclosure going on with mice that have been weaponized with COVID in a secret lab that was found in California. That'll probably be the headline of the show today. We're also going to get into the Blacklist with more programming pre-COVID episodes with clues about COVID. We're going to look at some of the headlines today, as well as a beam install in my living room I wanted to show you guys as well. Good morning. Let me say hi to everybody before we get started. Good morning. All right. Well, we are into season 7, episode 5. It aired in November of 2019, just before the pandemic of Blacklist. And the episode centers around a hypochondriac who is also a killer. And he basically preys on boys at a college in the dorm room, and he sneaks into these boys' dorm room while they're sleeping, injects them, and does creepy experiments on them. Let's take a look at this. Now, what makes this odd is that all of this is what we would all go through during the pandemic. This hypochondriac, germaphobe, hand washing, sanitizer, and that is what this character is doing. He's got the gloves, eye drops, and of course the mask. And literally November of 2019. Now, probably a month after this is when things started kicking in China with the beginning of the pandemic, but we wouldn't see it on our doorstep until early 2020. And of course, this episode was filmed long before all of that as well. Now, what's the importance of this? Well, people who are still asleep in the Matrix need to see decodes like this so they can understand that all this was already known about and pre-programmed. Now, this boy you see here is the main victim in the episode. And look at his birthday, 10/4. Now, I call out these birthdays so that you guys can see that there's a pattern here, that every time they put these birthdays in these shows, that they're basically, they mean something. They have significance. What is 10/4? Well, we've talked a lot about October 4th. It has 88 days left in the year, and it's the opposite date of the 88th day of the year. It's basically a portal number, portal date. Let's keep watching here.
And Ronald Perchik was a federal judge who suffered a deadly stroke 2 days after receiving a shingles vaccine.
Now, that, of course, was Elizabeth Keene from the series. And once again, talking about subjects that had not happened yet. Here she explains someone has a side effect of a stroke after getting the vaccine. Let's listen to that again.
And Ronald Perchik was a federal judge who suffered a deadly stroke 2 days after receiving a shingles vaccine.
Now, the hypochondriac doctor that I opened the show up with today, he's infecting these boys with the deadly diseases, and he's doing it based on their genetic DNA profile. Watch.
Theoretically, if a healthy person is injected with a high concentration of cancerous cells, and those cells got into his or her bone marrow,
he gives them cancer. Is that even possible?
He kills people by making them sick, by giving them cancer or pneumonia or some other deadly disease.
they could, catch leukemia.
Catch it like a cold?
Yeah, just a super bad one.
Subject Howard Keller, administering pathogen A21.
We are going
to feel a little pinch.
Devaine's looking at kids who fit a particular biochemical or genetic profile. Why?
We don't know, but of the 20 kids he sequenced, 5 developed life-threatening cancers.
The largest.
So, interesting, right? Now, I'm into season 8 now, and I'll collect screenshots and stuff like that for you guys for our next Blacklist show, but we're almost current with the series. It's on the 10th season now, so I got a little bit more of season 8 and season 9, and of course, season 10, and I'll report back to you. But listen to this next one. This is a different episode, and you're going to hear Reddington talk about, well, they're talking about an owl with an all-seeing eye. Listen.
The largest. Let us know if you would prefer a slice of the wing, breast, or all-seeing eye. The Blackiston fish owl.
Nobody touches the bird.
Weird, right? So there's all this trigger programming of things that only awake people know about, right? And they're going to eat this owl this is a completely separate episode from the one that I just talked about. So these are the kinds of decodes that contain specific information about events that had not happened yet. These are the most effective decodes in helping wake people up to truth. And these are the kinds of videos you can share so that people can see, wow, back then there was no COVID, and yet it's pretty specific. I'm going to check in with you guys, and then we'll get into the Ozark Honey Milk Ranch. And then after that, a few headlines about what's going on in the world. But Scott was able to get the beam up in my living room. I wanted to show you guys that. It's really cool. He basically fabricated it from red oak planks that I had cut probably almost a year and a half ago. And he screwed them together in sections. And that's what you're going to see next. Let's take a look. Well, the beam's going in. So this is the beginning of it. This is the first section, as you can see here, and that's how he did it. I mean, if any of you are thinking about trying to do something like this is a really fun project. First, he puts up this 2x4 that runs the entire length. Then he fabricates the beam. Basically, it's just 3 sides kind of screwed together. This is just a hole that he cut for the smoke detector wiring to come through, so we could put the smoke detector right there. But let's watch her. Scott's getting it done. We had to jack it up to get it. So sometimes, because you're dealing with twisted wood and nothing's perfect, so I had to get the jack out of the back of my truck and jack this beam up here to get it pushed into place. Look at that. That looks fantastic. Now this beam, this part of it did not want to go in because this was twisted. So we were hammering on it and jacking on it. We finally got it in place, but the rest of them went in just fine. That is beautiful. I mean, look at the texture on that. That is just amazing. Thanks, Scott. There's Scott there. And this is the finished beam. He's got the whole thing installed. Oh, Scott got it done. Look at that. And I put some caulking. There's a little bit of a crack there, but overall, I mean, for what we did with this, I think it turned out perfect. He used some kind of, I think he called it tung oil. Look at the grain. And this is kind of the focal point here. Red oak. Amazing stuff. Good job, Scott. And he even made these little connectors so that the transition would look good between each one, because it's actually several beams pieced together. Now, for those of you that are kind of late to this project, this is my house, and it's about 4 years in the making. I actually bought the property almost 5 years ago. And then had to save up to get these. These are actually just sheds. And so slowly over the last 4 years, I've been working on this, getting it livable. It still doesn't have a kitchen, but deck and stuff like that. And just made some furniture. This is some furniture I made if you're late to this project. But if you're interested in this, on the channel I put pretty much every single video that I've done on this project, I put in the title the word Ozark. So if you search Ozark on the channel, you should be able to find all these videos. Now, a lot of them are mixed with decodes and other things that I've been working on. But you can fast forward through those parts if you're just interested in this shed to house conversion, I guess you call it. This is a 16 by 50 here, and then it's attached to a 16 by 16, and they're attached in the middle by a hallway. That looks fantastic. He fabricated this whole thing. So that's it on the update. I'll check in with you guys, and then we're going to see what's going on in the world. A lot is starting to happen. We've been talking a lot about the electric kingdom and how it will be the ultimate form of control in the near future. They want people kind of stuck in a close proximity to one another. They want to confine us to small geographic areas that are more controllable, more manageable. And then that's when they'll continue to tighten the screws. This will all fall under the banner of global warming and climate change. And this is how they will impose controls in your life, such as how much energy you can use, how far you can travel. But really, it's going to be all about control. Now, we had talked about how this was a worldwide agenda. This isn't just America. This is worldwide. It's not just a liberal agenda. It is bipartisan. There's just the appearance of that. So, what's the next step? Well, Russia's doing it even. They even talked about bringing electric cars and electric vehicle technology online to slowly replace gasoline, which tells you everything you need to know, right? Because why would they give up their tactical advantage in this quote-unquote war by pushing all of their citizenry and their infrastructure toward electric? They would not do that unless there was a worldwide agenda. This is why you have to see past what we think is people at each other, the right-left paradigm. So Australia is doing the same thing. Now, a lot of you send me stories and information. I do try to look at most of everything, and oftentimes what you send me makes it into our headline shows because a lot of this stuff is very important. For instance, Australia, first Australian state to ban gas for new homes to cut emissions. And of course, this will force everyone onto electric, right? And this is how you can see this is a worldwide agenda. And again, all this is under the banner of climate change. Let's read a little bit about what they're doing in Australia. The Australian state of Victoria will ban natural gas connections to new homes from next year as part of a plan to cut emissions and lower energy bills, the state climate action minister said on Friday. Australia's second most populous state is the country's largest consumer of natural gas, with around 80% of homes connected but also has ambitious plans to reach net zero by 2045. So all of the world is heading toward this. This will be our future. Now, is there a way to stop it? Probably not. But at least be awake to it and understand that this is being imposed. And this will help you snap out of the right-left paradigm because you see that this is a worldwide agenda. Doesn't matter what they tell you, what politicians tell you, and how they try to manipulate you by telling you they're on your side and telling you they're going to put a stop to this stuff, because they're never going to do this. Now, over the coming weeks and years, we're going to see more and more countries getting on board with this, making plans to basically end natural gas, end gasoline, and force us all onto the grid. Here's another story in the headlines. California finally cleaning house with the homeless. Now, what's this about? Well, it was the liberal policies like limited affordable housing inventories to prop up property taxes and values of properties, right? And rents to create. And that's what created this homeless surge. People have nowhere to live. In order for homelessness not to be a thing, you have to be able to provide housing for people who work minimum wage. And California has decided to flush the toilet on the homeless population. Now, you guys know my feelings about how I would solve the homeless problem in America. If I was governor of this state, I would establish zoning that accounted for jobs and housing. The two have to be connected, because without housing, where are you going to put the people that need the jobs? Now, this applies to everybody. Even minimum wage people need to have a place to live, right? So how would you do this? Well, you would take a careful accounting of housing inventory. You would establish that, and that would be required to line up with the number of jobs for those houses. And you would have to have housing that would, that would relate to everyone in every income bracket, not just rich people. You can't just provide housing for rich people, push everyone out. Well, this is happening in a lot of places in America. Poor people or working class people are being pushed out of areas. America's boundaries are being redefined based on how much money you have. And there are areas that are becoming enclaves for the rich. And all the poor people are being pushed out. And as more and more automation happens, there's less and less need for a minimum wage worker, right? So America is going through a shakeup, and it's hiding just beneath the surface. None of the news are talking about it. They don't want you to know that poor people or working class people are being pushed out of certain areas, because if you knew that, you would see past the veil. You would see past the right-left paradigm. You would see that there is no right and left, that it's rich and poor. That's all that matters. So, right under our noses, essentially, rich enclaves are being built. Their infrastructure, their borders, and then what will happen is once that is established, the rest of us will go into 15-minute cities. And that's the way they want America to look like. Now, we've seen this before. Many of you have gotten lost in a car and you drive through, and all of a sudden you approach like a gate and you look behind it and you see all these rich homes, right? With land, places where you're not even allowed to go. It's like an invisible fence. Or you drive down the wrong street and all of a sudden you look and there are these huge mansions, and next thing you know, you're getting pulled over and asked a bunch of questions. It's happened to me a few times in my life, and I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong area. So this is the future of America. This is what they want. They want all of us under our set of rules in a 15-minute city, and then they want to be in their rich enclaves where they can kind of do what they want. So what's going on in America? And what's going on in California with this homeless problem? Well, let's read about where they're going to put all these people that they're kicking out of California now, who are homeless. John Janasco recently moved into a tiny cabin in Oakland after the city and the state shut down the sprawling homeless encampment where he had resided for most of the past 8 years. City officials consider the shed-sized unit with a bed, a folding chair, a desk, and a mini fridge a vast improvement over the makeshift shelters that once sat beneath the freeway. That's not how Janasco sees it. He says he does not have keys to the free cabin that the city has temporarily assigned him, nor is he allowed visitors. He had to get rid of most of the belongings and says he has barely slept there. It's not my home, he said, and he lost his job as a chef and then his apartment about a decade ago. My home was down the street. He lived in a structure of recycled wood and corrugated iron attached to a trailer. The evictions have brought into sharp relief one of the most intractable challenges for American cities, particularly those in California. As homelessness has surged, more people have congregated in large encampments for the semblance of security and stability. but such sites are often unsanitary, dangerous, exhausting neighbors and the owners of nearby businesses. What happens after the closure of Wood Street and other camps in California will serve as the latest test of how effectively the state is addressing homelessness. Nearly half of the nation's unsheltered population, those who sleep on the streets, in tents, in cars, or in other places not intended for human habitation, resides in California, according to last year's federal tally of homelessness. So, wow, half of the homeless people in America live in California. That is crazy. Now, look at the irony of this. We continue to let illegal immigrants into the country, and we can't even house our own people, our own citizens. So, the only way to fix something like this is, again, to match up jobs with homes. And I'm not saying to give people homes, I'm saying that the numbers should line up. Housing has to line up with jobs. If there aren't enough jobs, then there can't be, or if there aren't enough homes, then there can't be more jobs, right? Every person should be able to find affordable housing based on their 40-hour work week wage. And it should be within 30 minutes of their job, because if it's longer than that, then you're spending a significant amount of your income for fuel, right? And as fuel prices go up, it directly cuts into your ability to support yourself. You can't have a bunch of money and jobs with nowhere for people to live. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, let's get into this next story. We all know that cougars robbed the cradle, but this is ridiculous. Cougar attacks 8-year-old camper at Olympic National Park. More animal attacks. That's not the actual cougar that did it. Obviously, he didn't stop for a picture. Let's read about this. An 8-year-old camper survived being attacked by a cougar at Washington's Olympic National Park on Saturday evening. Happened at 6:30 p.m. at Lake Angeles National Park. The cougar casually abandoned its attack after the child's mother yelled at the animal, leaving the 8-year-old with minor injuries. All other campers in the area were evacuated after the attack, and access to the area was shut down due to the extreme nature of the incident. So these animals are losing their fear of humans. You know, there's all kinds of theories as to why this is happening. My guess is that something has changed in the human genetic makeup to where these animals are no longer afraid of humans. And the reasons for that genetic change and genetic, alteration, I'll let you fill in the blanks on that. But I'm sure if they've looked at the medical profile of some of these people being attacked, there might be a common thread. Look at all the comments down here. Now, here's our main story for today. And this is shocking. They're actually admitting that they found a secret lab in California that stored bioengineered mice laden with COVID. So these are bioweaponized mice. This was reported in USA Today. Look at this. I wonder if there's any clues in this picture here. Look at all these boxes. Wow. Medical equipment. Let's read about what's going on in Reedley, California. A months-long investigation into a rural California warehouse uncovered an illegal laboratory filled with infectious agents, medical waste, and hundreds of mice bioengineered to catch and carry COVID, according to Fresno County authorities. Health and Licensing said Monday that Prestige Biotech, a Chinese medical company registered in Nevada, was operating the unlicensed facility in Reedley, California, small city about 24 miles southeast of Fresno. The company, according to Reedley city manager Nicole Zyba, had a goal of being a diagnostics lab. They never had a business license. The city was completely unaware that they were in this building, operating under the cover of night. Fresno County Public Health Department launched its investigation of the facility in December 2022 after a code enforcement officer saw a garden hose attached to a building that was presumed to be vacant and had no active business license. Further inspection in March revealed that the facility housed various chemicals, suspected biological materials, bodily fluids, and hundreds of lab mice, among other lab supplies. Now, why in the heck isn't the FBI involved in this? This to me sounds like it goes all the way to the top. Bioweaponized mice to spread COVID in a Chinese lab sitting in America. This is unbelievable. County public health officials said they also found medical devices believed to have been developed on site, such as COVID-19 and pregnancy tests. Being a small rural town of 26,000, walking into what we believe to be a vacant building and finding lab supplies, live white mice, was fairly shocking. After several attempts to communicate with Prestige Biotech, Fresno County officials are accusing the company of not being forthcoming with information and failing to comply with orders. I think there's a much bigger story here than what they're letting on. The CDC detected 20 infectious agents. They had to conduct a separate investigation into the warehouse for several weeks because it was private property. After authorities discovered that people were working inside the building, Zyba said federal, state, and local agencies joined the investigation. So finally, the FBI shows up. Authorities were then able to serve an inspection warrant in March. Certain rooms of the warehouse were found to contain several vessels of liquid and various apparatus. There was blood, tissue, bodily fluid samples, and serums, thousands of vials of unlabeled fluids, and suspected biological material. Hundreds of mice were there, kept in inadequate conditions, in overcrowded cages, with no food or water. And it says here, an associate with Prestige Biotech told investigators the mice were genetically engineered to catch and carry COVID. Under an abatement warrant, the city seized the mice in April and euthanized 773 of them. Gosh, there are almost 1,000 mice, you guys. 180 mice were already dead. They then called in the CDC after 30 freezers and refrigerators were found, with some set to minus 80 degrees. Kind of like how vaccines need to be stored at sub-zero temperatures. They detected 20 potential infectious agents. They won't tell us what those are. Oh, here we go. They found HIV, COVID, chlamydia, rubella, malaria. What is Prestige Biotech? They had been operating the unlicensed and unregulated laboratory since October 2022. Now, you guys know my theory on what COVID was. I believe that our government was working with China to release this. And maybe this is why the FBI did not detect this laboratory. They're too busy looking at you and me about what we say on Facebook posts, blocking us from free speech. They should be looking at stuff like this if they're really serious about it, right? Wow. Let's read about Prestige Biotech. Emails between city officials and Zhu Quingyao, the company president, showed that Prestige Biotech had assumed assets from the now defunct company Universal Meditech Incorporated. Prestige Biotech was a creditor to UMI and became its successor. The assets were then moved to the Reedley warehouse from a site in Fresno. Authorities were unable to find any California-based addresses associated with the company. What else does it say here? Oh, it says here, the company reported it was making COVID-19 and pregnancy tests with the goal of being a diagnostic lab. Unbelievable. Let me go back into the chat and get your guys' thoughts on this breaking news about bioweaponized mice. I'm sure there are many such sites all over the United States to continue to both make the disease and make the cure. Hopefully you're now seeing the theme. The theme of the disease and then profiting off of the cure. Right? Yep, who paid the electric bill? Yes, they must have known. You can't operate a business without a paper trail. The FBI knows it. They should pressure these people and question them and find out who hired them. And my guess is it probably goes all the way to the top of the government. You make the disease and you make the cure. And that is a theme that we've been seeing on all these decodes, isn't it? How many times have I done a decode? And they're always talking about in the episode the disease and the cure. Wow. Major news, you guys. Yep, Apollo and Artemis. 6 billion to Israel this year for vaccines through DoD budget for countermeasure, says R. Davis. Where's the money? Where's the beef? Exactly. Now, apparently, the people in Fresno didn't get the memo and leaked this information, and they're probably in big trouble right now. I'm sure this story will get swept under the rug, and as I said, there are probably dozens and dozens of these sites all over the United States weaponizing mice and then profiting off of the cure. The love of money is the cause. Yes, Cheryl, but it goes even deeper. It's the devil himself at the top, pulling the puppet strings, bringing about the apocalypse and the last days. And the return of Christ. Yep, maybe the same with Lyme. Yeah, I saw, let's see, was it Dabu that talked about they're now basically, finally, bringing awareness to these weaponized ticks. And I think that fits into this story with the mice as well. They've weaponized these ticks to cause a meat allergy. Now, what would be the reason why the controllers would weaponize a tick to cause a meat allergy? Let's see who gets the answer to that one. It's pretty obvious, but Lone Star ticks. Let's see who gets the answer to that one. Yes, Mama, Sap, to buy artificial meat, to force everybody on artificial meat. We already know their agenda. They've already basically demonized cows and meat, haven't they? They've made cows and meat seem like a negative thing. And we've seen the agenda even on YouTube, where there are less and less hunting videos, less and less processing of animal videos. You're not allowed to show the processing of meat on YouTube anymore, unless you want to risk losing your channel. So, why wouldn't they weaponize a tick to make people have a meat allergy? That's what they want us all to do, right? They don't want us all to eat meat. So it's another thing that they can do. And notice how these ticks are all in these Midwestern places. This is where they want to stop people from eating meat. The people that eat the most meat in the Beltway. And that just so happens to be the place where there's a tick that makes you allergic to red meat. Really? It makes no sense in the natural world that this would happen naturally. It has to be bioengineered. This is how sick the controllers are. Literally doing covert experiments and weaponizing these things against the populace to push us down our agenda or their agenda. It's unbelievable. All right, what else is going on in the chat here? All right. Now, the thing about ticks is you're not always going to get like a site reaction or the typical, bullet. It actually looks like a target is what they say. It's got a sting in the middle or a bite in the middle with a ring around it. You're not always going to get that to have been infected by some tick. Sometimes it doesn't actually manifest that way. So if you have an aversion to meat, it could be because you already got bit by a tick and you just didn't know it. All right, you guys. Well, that's about it for today's show. Thanks everybody for showing up. I'll see you guys tomorrow, probably with more Blacklist and more Between the Headlines. Much love, everybody. Take care and be safe.